think for me, when I looked at the report, hearing and reading about the woeful lack of investment in training and opportunities for what essentially are a lot of bright and talented young and up-and-coming policing leaders, and also those at mid-career who are finding it difficult to make the jump into senior positions. There's talk of it creates perceptions of nepotism, cronyism, and essentially jobs for the boys.
Now, nepotism, cronyism and a postcode lottery of promotions are among the really damning criticisms laid out in a review into police leadership. The Police Leadership Commission concluded that despite having a pool of bright and talented officers, these key figures aren't identified early, and that investment in their development as leaders is woeful. The review was led by former Policing Minister Lord Herbert. He told Times Radio Breakfast that too many decisions are left to local police forces.
There are many things that are currently done at force level that either need to be done at that national level by the National Police Service or at a regional level, whatever the shape of police forces is. And I think the current system where you have 43 forces who can decide to do their own thing, who can train constables and not accredit that training, who can decide whether or not people go on leadership programmes, that just cannot go on.
Well, that was the voice of the former Policing Minister, Nick Herbert. He's now in the House of Lords. Don't forget, of course, you can hear Kate McCann and Stig Abel between 6 and 10 on Times Radio Breakfast. It's a great show, and it runs between Monday and Thursday every week. David Woode is crime editor for The Times. David, this does sound really damning. What would you say are the key takeaways from this report?
I think quite often we hear a lot of the themes come up when we do our reporting, but to see it in this very comprehensive report that's taken 8 months to compile, as 12 commissioners, which included Sir Stephen Watson, the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester, and Maggie Blythe, the temporary Chief Constable of Gloucestershire. There are so many things that policing needs to look at and heed, and there's 27 recommendations. I think for me, when I looked at the report, hearing and reading about the woeful lack of investment in training and opportunities for what essentially are a lot of bright and talented young and up-and-coming policing leaders, and also those at mid-career who are finding it difficult to make the jump into senior positions. There's talk of it creates perceptions of nepotism, cronyism, and essentially jobs for the boys. When there'll be applications open for chief constable positions, sometimes there might only be one sufficient candidate, giving rise to a shallow pool of candidates. But also, I think for me, when I looked at the report yesterday, when I went through it, I was struck by how something Lord Herbert and Lord Blunkett said about the acute leadership failings, where the IOPC, that's the police watchdog, the Independent Office for Police Conduct, since 2018 has launched 78 investigations into chief officers, and of that number, I believe 47 are in investigations into chief constables.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's only 43 chief constables, so it's maybe 8 too many, some might say.
It would suggest that, yeah. This idea of a so-called postcode lottery of promotion, just to pick that apart for us, is the report saying that in some parts of the country, frankly, it's quite easy to get up the greasy pole, in other parts it's absolutely hopeless? That's
a suggestion, but also it kind of gives rise to the fact that 43 police forces in England and Wales, each of them all doing their own thing. And so while there are frameworks in place, if you are, say, for example, a rural force, your makeup and the issues that you deal with day to day might be different to a metropolitan force, such as the Metropolitan Police or West Midlands, for example. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the crux of it.
Right, but
it's not fair.
No, it isn't fair. Clearly, the report also found that these incidents where officers abuse their position for sexual purposes. Now, there have been some horrific stories about police officers in the last couple of years. We all know that. But this has got to be being taken seriously, surely.
Well, yes, it is. And, 3 years ago, myself and my colleague Fiona Hamilton, we did a big project on rogue officers. And we looked at, I think it was between March 2021 and October 2023, we looked at cases of officers who had been prosecuted for crime, serving officers, and I believe the number was about 149, which ran the gamut from rape, sexual offences, drugs, you name it, misconduct in public office. There has been a real concerted effort to kick out rogue officers. I know in London, Sir Mark Rowley, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, has kicked out, I believe, around 1,500 officers since he took over in 2022.
Which is both really impressive on one level and terrifying on another, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the biggest clear out. The biggest standards clear out in their history.
Yeah. But the fact that these people needed to be cleared out is horrendous.
But then it also goes down to vetting practices and making sure people who shouldn't be in the police aren't fit to wear the uniform. And I think of the case of Cliff Mitchell. I'll be very careful how I describe this. He was a Metropolitan Police officer who was investigated for rape in 2019, and he was cleared. No further action was taken against him, shall I say, and then he was able to join the police. He then raped another woman repeatedly, and he was prosecuted and found guilty of not only that rape in respect of that victim survivor, but also the previous one. He was no further action was taken against him, and yet he was able to
still
join the force.
Yeah.
And so there's so much work that's gone on to make sure that hiring practices are transparent and are robust, and people who aren't fit to wear the uniform are not eligible to join the service.
Appreciate your time. Thank you, David. That's David Woode, who's crime editor for The Times. And it's not unrelated. Later in the programme, we are going to talk to the Solicitor General, Ellie Reeves, about how we go about tackling sexual abuse and sexual assaults and rapes, and trying to bring the figures of violence against women and girls down, which is something that we have been told persistently is very, very dear to Sir Keir Starmer and the current iteration of the Labour government. David, thanks very much.